You are sitting in your living room. It is the middle of January. The thermostat on your hallway wall says 72 degrees. The furnace in your basement has been running for 45 minutes straight, burning through expensive gas or electricity, and yet you pull a blanket tighter around your shoulders. You can feel it on the back of your neck. A slow, steady, freezing draft of winter air cutting right through the room. You walk over to the window, put the back of your hand against the glass, and it feels like a block of ice. You feel the cold air bleeding in through the edges. And you know, because the electric company sends you a reminder every 30 days, that your heating bill is going to be over $300 again this month. You are paying to heat the outside of your yard. So, you do what they trained you to do. You call a professional. A man in a nice polo shirt comes to your house, holds a digital thermometer to your glass, shakes his head, and tells you that your window seals have failed. He opens a glossy folder and tells you the only fix is to replace them all. Double-pane, argon-filled, energy-efficient replacements. The quote is $15,000. He tells you not to worry. You can finance it over 10 years. Now, I want you to sit with this. There is a simple material you can buy at any craft store or farm supply for about $4. You do not need a drill. You do not need a caulk gun. You press it into the edges of your window with nothing but a dull butter knife. It stops the cold air, dead in its tracks. It expands and contracts with the weather. It never cracks. It never peels. And it turns that freezing draft into a solid, impenetrable wall of dead air. It is not plastic. It is not rubber. It is what our grandfathers used before the window industry decided to invent a problem they could charge you $15,000 to solve. My name is Elias Yoder. I am Amish. I live on a farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, in a house my grandfather built in 1934. We do not have a digital thermostat. We have no central heating system blowing forced air through expensive ductwork. We rely on a single wood stove to heat the main living space through winters that drop well below zero. And yet, the room stays perfectly warm. It stays comfortable. When the winter wind howls across the pasture in February, we do not feel a single freezing draft cutting across our kitchen table. Our windows are very old. They are single-pane glass set in wood frames that have breathed with the weather for almost a century. The modern window salesman would look at our house and tell us we are losing all our heat, but we are not. We use a trick that has been keeping old farmhouses tight and draft-free since before fiberglass was even invented. Today, I am going to show you exactly what this $4 trick is. I am going to show you where to buy it, how to press it into your windows in under 10 minutes, and why it holds up better than the expensive rubber seals the modern builders use. I am also going to be completely honest with you about what it will not do, because I would rather have your trust than impress you with a false promise. By the end of this video, you will know how to seal your entire house this weekend. You will keep your expensive heat inside exactly where it belongs, and you will stop handing your hard-earned money to a utility company that profits every time your window leaks. Stay with me. This is simple knowledge that truly matters for your family. Let me start by telling you the quiet secret the window industry hopes you never figure out. Because once you understand why your modern windows fail, you will never look at a tube of silicone caulk the same way again. When you look at a brand new replacement window in a shiny showroom, it looks perfect. The smooth salesman points to the thick rubber weather stripping and the smooth bead of high-tech acrylic caulk. He tells you it is engineered in a laboratory to keep the weather out, and on the day it is installed, it works. It creates a tight, perfect plastic seal. But here is the truth about houses. A wooden house is not a dead thing. A house moves. The wood framing around your windows is constantly breathing. On a humid day in July, that wood takes in moisture and swells. On a freezing, dry night in January, the wood gives up moisture and shrinks. Every single day, year after year, the bones of your house are expanding and contracting. Now, think about that modern plastic seal and that rubber caulk. Plastic does not breathe. Over a few years, the summer sun bakes that rubber. The deep winter cold freezes it. It gets stiff. It gets brittle. And because the wood around it keeps moving while the rubber has turned hard, something has to give. The seal cracks. It might just be a hairline split, thinner than a piece of paper, right where the frame meets the sash. But a hairline split is all the winter wind needs. The cold air pushes through that tiny crack, bypassing all that expensive double-pane glass. The industry knows exactly how this works. They design these materials to fail on a schedule. They want the rubber to crack after 7 or 8 years, so you have to call them back to rip it out and do it all over again. They sell you a costly temporary patch disguised as a permanent fix. We never bought into that endless cycle. We use a natural material that actually moves and breathes with the house. Before I show you the $4 trick, you need to understand how the cold is actually robbing you. Because if you do not understand the enemy, you cannot stop it. Think of the winter wind like water. If there is a tiny hole in a bucket, the water will find it and leak out. Air works the exact same way, just in reverse. The heat inside your house is under pressure. It desperately wants to escape out into the freezing night. And the cold air outside is heavy, constantly pushing against your walls, looking for a way in. When you have a tiny crack around your window frame, you create a highway. The hot air rushes out, and the freezing air rushes in to replace it. That is the draft you feel on the back of your neck. The engineers will try to sell you complicated solutions, but the old farmers knew the true secret to stopping this transfer. It is what we simply call dead air. Heat cannot easily jump across a space of still, unmoving air. That is why a fluffy winter coat keeps you warm. It is not the fabric itself that holds the heat. It is the millions of tiny pockets of trapped, dead air inside the fluff. If you can trap dead air in the cracks around your windows, the heat stays inside, and the cold stays outside. The simple physics do not change. Modern builders try to trap air using solid plastic and hard rubber, but as I just told you, those crack and fail every single time. The Amish way is to fill those gaps with a natural material that is mostly dead air to begin with, a material that moves, breathes, and never cracks. Let me show you exactly what it is. Here is the secret. It is not found in the shiny window replacement aisle of the big hardware store. It is found in the agricultural supply store, a local craft shop, or online for about $4. It is pure, unspun sheep's wool roving, or, if you cannot find that, simple traditional cotton rope caulk. Why sheep's wool? Wool is a genuine miracle of nature. It is naturally crimped, dense, and fluffy. It is made almost entirely of millions of tiny pockets of trapped dead air. When a sheep stands in a freezing blizzard, the harsh wind does not reach its skin because the thick wool traps the body heat perfectly. We are simply taking that exact same natural engineering and applying it directly to your drafty window. Here is why it beats the expensive plastic seals. When you stuff a thin line of natural wool into the cracks of your window frame, it acts like a gentle spring. It compresses tightly to fit into the smallest gaps, but it always wants to push back out. When your wooden window frame shrinks in the dead of winter, the wool naturally expands to fill the newly opened space. When the wood swells in the humid summer, the wool gently compresses. It never cracks. It never gets brittle. It never peels away. If you have a window gap that gets hit by direct freezing rain, a small touch of natural beeswax rubbed onto the outside of the wool completely sheds the water, while still letting the wooden frame breathe underneath. A small $4 bag of wool roving will easily seal an entire room of drafty windows. And the best part? It is completely reusable. You can pull it out in the spring when you want to open the glass. Keep it in a bag and push it right back in when November returns. The window salesman will never tell you about sheep's wool. There is no profit margin in a natural material that costs pennies and lasts for a decade. Now, let me show you how to find the invisible drafts. Before you can stop the freezing draft, you must find exactly where the cold air is sneaking in. The energy auditors and window professionals will show up at your house with expensive thermal imaging cameras and fancy infrared lasers. They will charge you $100 just to point out the leaks to you. You do not need any of their expensive machines. My own grandfather taught me how to find the invisible gaps using nothing but a single candle. Wait for a cold, windy evening. That is when the drafts are pushing the hardest against your home. Turn off your furnace or your heater for 10 minutes so the air inside the rooms is completely still. You do not want the blowing vents to confuse you. Light your candle. Hold it about an inch away from the edge of your window frame. Slowly and steadily, walk the line. Trace the entire perimeter of the glass. Move up the sides, across the top casing, and pay special attention to the middle where the top and bottom sashes meet. Watch the flame closely. Where the window is tight, the flame will burn straight and steady. But the moment you pass over a hidden crack, the winter wind will grab that flame. It will flicker, it will bend sharply, or it might even blow out entirely. That dancing flame is a finger pointing directly at the hole where your hard-earned money is bleeding out into the freezing night. Check the latch. Check the bottom sill. Wherever the flame bends, press a small piece of painter's tape to the frame. Within 5 minutes, you will have a perfect map of every invisible leak in that room. You did it for the price of a simple matchstick. Now, we take our wool and seal them. Let me show you exactly how to install this. You will not need a noisy power drill. You will not need a messy tube of sticky silicone that ruins your hands and your woodwork. You need exactly 2 things: your $4 bag of wool roving and a plain, dull butter knife from your kitchen drawer. Go to the first piece of blue tape you placed during your candle test. That is your worst leak. Take a piece of the wool roving and gently roll it between your bare palms until it forms a soft, loose rope, about the thickness of a lead pencil. Hold that wool rope over the crack. Take your dull butter knife and gently push the wool straight into the narrow gap. Do not force it so hard that you damage the wood. Just tuck it firmly into the empty space. You want it snug, but not packed as hard as a rock. Remember the simple physics we talked about earlier. We want that wool to stay fluffy enough to properly hold millions of tiny pockets of dead air. Work your way down the side of the window casing. Push, tuck, and move. Push, tuck, and move. When you hit the latch where the 2 window sashes meet in the middle, lay a slightly thicker strip of wool right across the gap and close the latch down tight over it. The latch will compress the wool into a perfect, custom-molded seal. If you are using the traditional cotton rope caulk instead, the entire process is exactly the same. You just press the sticky rope directly over the cold crack with your thumb. In less than 10 minutes, you will have traced the entire window. No mess, no toxic fumes, no long curing time. Now, strike your match and hold your candle up to that exact same spot again. The small flame will stand perfectly straight and entirely still. The freezing winter wind is officially gone. You have just built an impenetrable wall of dead air. And you did it all for pennies, with your own 2 hands. Now, I am going to be completely honest with you, because that is the only way I know how to do this, and the only way this channel stays worth your trust. There are folks on the internet who will eagerly tell you that a cheap homemade trick can magically fix any problem in the world. I will not tell you that. I will never oversell this. This wool seal is a draft stopper. It is not magic. If your window pane is physically cracked, or if the wooden frame itself is completely rotted out and falling apart, a simple piece of sheep's wool will not hold your house together. Furthermore, if you have old, thin, single-pane glass, the glass itself will still feel cold to the touch. This method stops the freezing wind from blowing around the edges of the window, but it does not miraculously change a thin sheet of old glass into a thick, modern, insulated window. But here is the honest truth about your winter heating bill. A thin pane of glass will lose some heat, yes, but an active, blowing draft of freezing air sweeping through a tiny crack is what truly robs your furnace and drains your wallet. That constant breeze is what forces your expensive heater to run for 3 hours straight without stopping. By finally stopping the active draft, you solve the absolute biggest and most expensive part of the temperature problem. Know exactly what the tool is for, and it will serve you faithfully. Honest knowledge is always more useful than a clever exaggeration. If you treat it with respect, it will keep your family warm without a massive bill. Now, let me show you the second half of this old farmhouse system, the part that actually handles the cold glass itself. So you have stopped the draft with the wool. The wind is blocked, but as I just told you, that old glass is still cold. When the sun goes down and the temperature outside drops into the single digits, that glass becomes a giant block of ice, pulling the heat right out of your room. The modern solution is to sell you thick thermal curtains for hundreds of dollars. The Amish solution is already sitting folded at the foot of your bed. My grandmother called it the night quilt rhythm. Every evening at dusk, when the winter sun slipped behind the trees, she did not just close a thin decorative blind. She took heavy, thick, cotton-filled quilts and hung them directly over the windows. Some folks used plain, heavy wool blankets. You can easily do the exact same thing tonight. Install a cheap, sturdy rod above your window and hang a thick, heavy blanket tight against the frame, closing off the glass entirely from the rest of the room. This is not just about blocking the moonlight. This is about our old friend, dead air. When you hang a heavy quilt tight against a window, you trap a large pocket of air between the freezing cold glass and the thick fabric. That trapped air stops moving. It goes dead. And because heat cannot easily jump across a space of still, dead air, the warmth from your wood stove or your furnace stays inside the room where your family is sitting, instead of bleeding out through the icy glass. In the morning, when the sun rises, you pull the heavy quilts back, let the warm sunshine flood in, and heat the house for free. Night quilt, day sun. It is a simple daily rhythm. It costs you absolutely nothing, because you are using blankets you already own. When you combine the wool packed into the cracks to stop the blowing draft, and the heavy quilt hung at night to insulate the cold glass, you have completely neutralized a freezing window. You do not need a $15,000 upgrade. You just need the rhythm. Now, I want to take a moment to look at the honest math of what you just learned today. The average American heating bill hits well over $300 a month during the bitter winter. Over 4 cold months, that is $1,200. A modern window salesman wants you to take out a $15,000 loan to stop those drafts. You just stop them completely with a simple $4 bag of sheep's wool and a heavy blanket from your hallway closet. You save that entire $1,200 this winter, and you will easily save it again next winter. Think about who actually profits when your house is freezing. The gas company makes money. The electric company makes money. The window manufacturer makes a fortune. They built a massive industry on the idea that you are completely helpless without their expensive technology and their endless monthly bills. They trained a whole country to believe that basic family comfort requires a costly contract. But a person who can seal their own home with a dull butter knife and a piece of natural wool is a person who needs no one's permission. You are truly independent. So this coming weekend, I want you to try it. Buy the wool, turn off the furnace, Light the candle, walk the line, and push that soft seal straight into the dark cracks. Tell me in the comments below, what state do you live in, and exactly how high did your heating bill get last January? I read every single one of these comments. The honest stories you share are the very reason I keep recording these videos. Next time, I am going to show you how my grandfather kept our pipes from freezing using nothing but dry leaves and a simple wooden box, long before expensive electric heat tape was ever invented. Until then, seal the drafts, pull the night quilts tight, stay warm, and remember, the people who built this country with their hands